The fallen star, the sulfurous atmosphere of Vega 9 burned Thorne's lungs despite his respirator. The small moon wasn't meant for human habitation, but that never stopped scavengers like him. His scanner beeped steadily, guiding him toward the crash site that had appeared on his ship's sensors 3 hours earlier. Better be worth something, he muttered, adjusting the oxygen mix in his mask. 6 months of barely scraping by had left his accounts dangerously low. One more failed salvage run, and he'd have to sell parts from his own ship, the Wanderer, just to afford fuel. The landscape around him was barren and cracked, punctuated by steaming geysers of yellow gas. As he crested a ridge, he saw it, a sleek vessel unlike any he'd encountered before. It gleamed with an iridescent sheen even under the dull red sun, its hull curved in impossible angles that seemed to bend light itself. Not hegemony, Thorne whispered, excitement building in his chest. Not human either. Unknown tech meant credits, lots of them. He approached cautiously, his hand resting on the plasma cutter at his hip. The ship had carved a deep furrow in the moon's surface, but remarkably it appeared largely intact, no signs of explosion or catastrophic failure. As Thorne reached the vessel, he noticed a section of the hull had partially melted, creating an opening large enough for him to enter. Inside, soft blue lights pulsed along organic-looking corridors. The air was breathable, surprisingly sweet with a hint of something like cinnamon. He removed his respirator, following the pulsing lights deeper into the ship. The interior seemed to respond to his presence, doorways opening silently as he approached. Then he heard it. A soft moan from what appeared to be the control center. A figure lay crumpled beside what must have been the pilot's chair. Not human, but humanoid. Female, with skin the color of pale amethyst and hair that seemed to float weightlessly, shifting between silver and blue as it caught the light. Her eyes were closed, and a luminous fluid, blood, seeped from a wound on her side. "Hey," Thorne said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you understand me?" Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises like swirling galaxies, deep purple with flecks of gold that seemed to move. She gasped, trying to back away. "Easy," he said, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. "I'm not going to hurt you." She spoke, her voice melodic but incomprehensible. Then she winced, clutching her side. "You're hurt," Thorne said, reaching for his medkit. "Let me help you." The universal translator on his wrist beeped as it analyzed her language. After a moment, it began converting her words. "The hegemony," she managed. "They will come. You must leave." Thorne frowned. The hegemony, the military force that controlled most human colonies, wasn't known for diplomatic relations with new species. "I'm not leaving you here," he decided, surprising himself. Salvage was his business, not rescue. When he tried to help her stand, she collapsed against him, her slight form unexpectedly warm in his arms. Her eyes, those swirling cosmic pools, looked up at him with fear and hope. "You're safe now," he told, her not entirely sure why he felt so protective. Her eyes seemed to glow then, her pupils dilating and the gold flecks brightening. A small smile curved her lips before she lost consciousness. Thorne lifted her carefully, decision made. Whatever she was, whoever she was, the hegemony wanted her, and that was reason enough to keep her away from them. As he carried her back to the Wanderer, alarms began to sound from his ship. Long-range scanners had detected approaching vessels. "Hegemony vessels. They're already here," he muttered, quickening his pace. His simple salvage run had just become something far more complicated, and for the first time in years, Thorne felt alive. Dangerous refuge. The Wanderer's engines roared to life as Thorne settled the unconscious alien woman into his makeshift medical bay, really just a converted storage room with a cot and basic supplies. His ship shuddered as it broke through Vega 9's, thin atmosphere, dust and sulfur clouds swirling in its wake. "Computer, scan for pursuit," Thorne commanded, his fingers dancing across the control panel. The viewscreen flickered, showing 3 hegemony cruisers entering the moon's orbit. Multiple vessels detected. Identification: Hegemony Patrol Class. Weapon systems active. The computer responded in its flat voice. Thorne cursed under his breath. Standard salvage runs never attracted this kind of attention. Whoever his passenger was, she was valuable enough to warrant a military response. Plot course through the Carillion asteroid belt, he ordered. Maximum stealth protocols. The Wanderer was no warship, but Thorne had spent years modifying it for situations exactly like this. Outrunning authorities, slipping past customs, vanishing when necessary. The old salvage vessel had tricks that didn't appear in any registry. The ship accelerated toward the dense asteroid field. Thorne set the autopilot and returned to check on his passenger. She lay still, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The wound on her side had stopped bleeding, the strange luminous fluid now hardening into something like crystal. "What are you?" he murmured, running a scanner over her form. The results were bewildering. Her biological composition included elements unknown to his database. Her eyes opened suddenly, locking onto his with startling intensity. "Ilaria," she said, her voice clearer now as the translator processed her language. "My name is Ilaria." "Thorne," he replied, nodding. "We're being pursued by hegemony ships. Why are they after you?" She attempted to sit up, wincing with the effort. "My people are called Celestrians. We have abilities the hegemony wishes to weaponize." "What kind of abilities?" Instead of answering, Ilaria reached toward the metal wall of the ship. As her fingertips made contact, ripples of energy, like liquid light, spread from her touch. The metal seemed to soften, reshape, then harden again, forming a small shelf that hadn't existed moments before. Thorne stared, mouth slightly open. "That's impossible." "Matter resonance," she explained, exhaustion evident in her voice. "All Celestrians can manipulate certain elements. Some, like me, can affect more complex materials." She paused, meeting his gaze. "Commander Drask of the hegemony believes our abilities could revolutionize warfare." The ship jolted suddenly, alarms blaring. Thorne rushed back to the cockpit. A hegemony cruiser had spotted them and fired a warning shot. "Attention, unregistered vessel," a stern voice came through the comm system. "This is Commander Drask of the Hegemony Enforcement Division. You are harboring a fugitive of strategic importance. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Thorne cut the communication and pushed the Wanderer's engines beyond safety limits. The ship lurched forward, diving into the swirling chaos of the asteroid belt. "Computer, deploy countermeasures. Pattern Omega," he shouted. Small decoys burst from the ship's rear, each emitting signals identical to the Wanderer's signature. They scattered in different directions as Thorne piloted through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. The pursuing cruiser fired again, vaporizing one of the decoys. For a moment, the hegemony vessel hesitated, its sensors confused by the multiple signatures. Thorne felt a presence behind him and turned to see Ilaria leaning against the doorway, her face pale but determined. "I can help," she said, moving unsteadily toward the control panel. "You should be resting," Thorne protested, but she ignored him, placing her hands on the ship's console. Energy rippled from her fingers into the ship's systems. The engines responded. With new power, the shields strengthened and the stealth systems reconfigured to a pattern the hegemony wouldn't recognize. "How did you—" Thorne began, but was interrupted as the ship suddenly accelerated with surprising agility, weaving through the asteroid field with precision no human pilot could match. Behind them, the hegemony cruiser struggled to follow, eventually falling back as the Wanderer disappeared deeper into the belt. Ilaria collapsed into the co-pilot seat, her energy spent. "That will buy us time," she managed, her luminous eyes dimming slightly. Thorne stared at her with newfound respect and concern. "Thank you," he said simply, then added with a half-smile, "I think you and I have a lot to talk about." She returned, his smile weakly. "Yes, I believe we do." As the Wanderer continued its flight through the protective cover of the asteroid field, Thorne realized his life had irrevocably changed. What had begun as a simple salvage run had become something far more dangerous and perhaps far more important. The Bond Deepen's 3 days had passed since their narrow escape from Commander Drask. The Wanderer drifted silently in the shadow of a gas giant known as Hyperion, its energy systems running at minimal capacity to avoid detection. The massive planet's electromagnetic storms provided perfect cover, scrambling any scanning technology the hegemony might use to track them. In the small galley of the ship, Thorn watched as Ilaria examined a cup of steaming tea with curious delight. Her recovery had been remarkably swift, the crystalline substance that formed over her wound gradually dissolving as her body healed itself. "This is pleasant," she said, sipping the tea. "Much better than the nutrition supplements." Thorn smiled despite himself. Over the past days, he'd found her fascination with human customs endearing. "It's just standard issue black tea, nothing special." "To you, perhaps." Her galaxy-like eyes met his. "Among my people, sharing sustenance is an intimate act. It suggests trust." Thorn felt his face warm slightly. "Well, I don't have much else to offer on this rust bucket." "Your rust bucket saved our lives," Ilaria reminded him, setting down her cup. "And you risked everything for a stranger. That is uncommon in my experience with other species." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it held weight. Thorn had been a loner for years, taking salvage jobs that kept him away from both human colonies and hegemony patrols. Yet somehow the presence of this alien woman felt natural, as if she belonged aboard his ship. "You never finished telling me about your people," he said finally. "The Celestrians. You said you were on a mission when you crashed." Ilaria's expression grew solemn. "Yes. I was sent to find evidence of an ancient connection between our species." "Connection? Humans and Celestrians?" She nodded, reaching into a small pouch she kept close. From it, she withdrew what looked like a data crystal, similar to human technology but far more advanced. When she activated it, holographic symbols filled the air between them. According to our oldest records, Celestrians visited Earth thousands of years ago. We believe we may have influenced human development, perhaps even contributed to your genetic code. Thorn leaned forward, studying the floating symbols with fascination. "That's hard to believe." "Is it?" Ilaria reached across the table, her fingers lightly touching the back of his hand. A warm sensation spread up his arm, and for a brief moment, he felt connected to something vast and ancient. "Do you not feel it? The resonance between us?" He couldn't deny it. From the moment he'd found her, something had drawn him to her, something beyond physical attraction or curiosity. "The hegemony discovered our research," Ilaria continued, withdrawing her hand. "Commander Drask believes that if he can harness Celestrian abilities and combine them with human adaptability, he could create the ultimate weapons. That's why he shot down my vessel." Thorn's jaw tightened. "The hegemony claims to protect humanity, but they've been expanding aggressively for decades. A power like yours would give them control over the entire sector." "Not just the sector," Ilaria said quietly. "If Drask succeeds, the balance of power throughout known space would shift irreversibly." Outside the viewports, the swirling storms of Hyperion painted the galley in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Thorn watched as they played across Ilaria's features, highlighting the subtle alien aspects of her beauty. "So what's our plan?" he asked, surprising himself with the hour. When had her problem become his mission? Ilaria's eyes brightened. "There is someone who might help us. A researcher named Vasara who operates an independent station near the Crimson Nebula. She studied both Celestrian and human biology. If anyone can verify the connection between our species, it's her." "Vasara?" Thorn straightened. "Tall woman, cybernetic eye, runs experiments that skirt the edge of legality." "You know her?" "We've done business before. She's brilliant but complicated." Thorn hesitated. "Can we trust her?" "We have few options," Ilaria replied. "And less time. Drask won't stop searching." As if summoned by her words, the ship's proximity alarm blared. Thorn rushed to the cockpit, Ilaria close behind. "Hegemony. Scout ship," he confirmed, checking the scanners. "They haven't spotted us yet, but they're on a search pattern that will bring them this way." Ilaria placed her hand on his shoulder. the touch sending that same strange warmth through him. Then we should go to Vasara, now. Thorn nodded, inputting coordinates for the Crimson Nebula as the Wanderer's engines hummed back to life. As they prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, he found himself stealing glances at Ilaria. This woman from the stars had changed everything in less than a week. The solitary salvager now found himself in the middle of a conflict that could reshape the future of humanity. And strangely, he wouldn't have it any other way. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Thorn realized he was no longer running away from his past. With Ilaria, he was running toward something new, something that felt remarkably like purpose. Betrayal. Among the stars, the Crimson Nebula lived up to its name, a vast cloud of red and orange gases swirling around the small research station that orbited at its edge. Vasara's facility, officially designated Research Outpost Theta, was infamous in certain circles as a place where scientific boundaries were pushed beyond legal limits. Thorn docked the Wanderer at the station's less monitored secondary port, bypassing the main security protocols with codes that were still valid from his last visit. As the airlock cycled, he turned to Ilaria, who had changed into some of his spare clothes. Dark pants and a faded jacket that somehow looked elegant on her alien frame. "Stay close," he warned, checking his sidearm. "Vasara's station attracts all types, not all of them friendly." Ilaria nodded, her luminous eyes taking in everything with keen interest. "I sense many life forms here, different species, interesting energies. Just try not to resonate with anything," Thorn said with a half-smile. "We're aiming for low profile." The corridors of the station were dimly lit and crowded with a mixture of humans and various alien species. Some cast curious glances at Ilaria. Celestrians were clearly rare enough to draw attention, but most were too absorbed in their own affairs to notice. Vasara's laboratory occupied the upper level of the station. When they arrived at her door, Thorn hesitated before pressing the access panel. "Remember, she's unpredictable. Let me do the talking." The door slid open to reveal a cavernous space filled with equipment that blended cutting-edge technology with seemingly archaic tools. At its center stood Vasara, tall and imposing with dark skin and a cybernetic eye that gleamed red in the laboratory's light. Her natural eye widened slightly when she saw them. "Thorn Blackwood," she said, her voice carrying the hint of an accent from Earth's southern continents. "I thought you'd been captured by the hegemony months ago." "Sorry to disappoint," Thorn replied. "We need your help, Vasara." Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Ilaria. "A Celestrian. On my station." She moved closer, studying Ilaria with undisguised fascination. "I've only seen your kind in restricted research files." "This is Ilaria," Thorn introduced. "She's being hunted by Commander Drask." Vasara's expression darkened at the name. "Drask has been pressing all independent researchers to join hegemony projects. Those who refuse suffer accidents." She gestured for them to follow her deeper into the lab. "What brings you to me?" As they walked, Ilaria explained her mission and the potential connection between Celestrians and humans. Vasara listened, intently, occasionally nodding. "I've suspected something similar," she admitted, stopping at a workstation. "The genetic similarities are too specific to be coincidence. I can help you analyze your data crystal, but I'll need a sample from both of you to compare." Thorn felt uneasy but nodded. Vasara collected blood samples from both him and Ilaria, then inserted the Celestrian data crystal into her analysis system. "This will take time," she said. "You should rest. There are quarters connected to the lab you can use." Hours later, Thorn awoke suddenly. Something felt wrong. The quarters were dark, but he could sense Ilaria was no longer beside him where she had been resting. He reached for his weapon, only to find it missing. The main lab lights flickered on, momentarily blinding him. When his vision cleared, he saw Ilaria restrained on an examination table, Vasara standing over her with several monitoring devices attached to the Celestrian skin. "What the hell are you doing?" Thorn demanded, rushing forward only to be stopped by an energy barrier. Visara didn't look up from her work. Securing my future, Thorn. Commander Drask has offered significant resources for a living Celestrian specimen, particularly this one. You sold us out, Thorn growled, searching for any way past the barrier. I made a practical decision, Visara corrected. The hegemony was going to find you eventually. This way, at least I benefit. On the table, Ilaria's eyes found Thorn's. Despite her situation, she appeared calm. The resonance, she whispered. Remember what I showed you? Before Thorn could respond, the station's alarms blared. A voice announced, Hegemony vessels approaching. Prepare for boarding. Right on schedule, Visara murmured, checking her monitors. Don't worry, Thorn. Drask only wants the Celestrian. You might even walk away from this, though I wouldn't count on it. Thorn closed his eyes, focusing on the strange connection he had felt when Ilaria touched him days before. That resonance, that ancient link between their species. He pressed his hands against the energy barrier, expecting pain, but instead felt something respond, both in the barrier itself and within him. The energy field rippled, weakened, then collapsed entirely. Visara turned in shock. Impossible, she gasped. You're human, you can't. Thorn didn't let her finish, rushing forward to free Ilaria from her restraints. As their eyes met, a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever connected humans and Celestrians, it was awakening in him through their bond. We need to go, he said, helping her to her feet. Now. Behind them, Visara reached for an alarm panel, but Ilaria was quicker. With a gesture, the metal of the panel liquefied and reformed, sealing the controls. Your betrayal serves neither of our peoples, Ilaria told Visara calmly. But we thank you for confirming what we suspected. As they fled toward the Wanderer, station security in pursuit and hegemony ships closing in, Thorn realized their journey had just become infinitely more complex and more important. The connection between their species wasn't just ancient history, it was evolving right now, between them. Hearts across galaxies. The Wanderer burst from the docking bay in a flurry of emergency warnings and blaring alarms. Thorn's fingers flew across the controls with practiced precision, but his mind was reeling from what had just happened in Visara's lab. They're powering weapons, he shouted, as the ship's sensors detected energy buildups from the approaching hegemony vessels. 3 cruisers, forming a blockade pattern. Ilaria settled into the co-pilot's seat, her face serene despite their dire situation. Do you trust me, Thorn? Their eyes met across the cockpit, and in that moment everything else seemed to fade away. The pursuit, the danger, even the vastness of space around them, all secondary to the connection that hummed between them. Yes, he answered simply. She extended her hands toward the ship's console, but this time she also reached for his arm. Then fly with me. As her fingers touched his skin, the sensation was unlike anything he had experienced before. Energy coursed through him. Not painful, but overwhelming, as if every cell in his body was awakening to a potential that had always been dormant. His awareness expanded, merging with the ship's systems in ways that defied explanation. Together, they guided the Wanderer through a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible. The ship responded as if it were an extension of their joined consciousness, moving with a grace and speed that left the hegemony cruisers firing at empty space. What's happening to me? Thorn gasped, watching as faint traces of energy, similar to Ilaria's but with a distinctly different pattern, rippled from his own fingertips into the controls. The resonance is growing stronger, she explained, her voice filled with wonder. The dormant Celestrian genetic markers in your DNA are responding to my presence, to our connection. It happens rarely, but when humans and Celestrians form a deep bond. A massive blast from the lead hegemony ship cut off her explanation, rocking the Wanderer violently. Warning lights flashed across the console. Engine stability compromised, the computer reported. Shields at 30%. Through the view screen, Thorn could see the intimidating silhouette of a hegemony command ship joining the pursuit. On its bridge would be Commander Drask himself, determined to capture the secret to Celestrian powers. We can't outrun them forever, Thorn said grimly. And we can't fight that kind of firepower. Ilaria's expression shifted to one of determination. We don't need to. She pointed to a section of space that appeared empty on their sensors. There. It's hidden, but I can sense. It what? A wormhole, natural but unstable. My people have used them for centuries, but they're invisible to most technology. Thorn hesitated only briefly before altering course. If you're wrong, we'll be atomized, she finished with a small smile. But if I'm right, we'll be beyond Drask's reach, at least for now. As they approached the coordinates Ilaria indicated, space itself seemed to warp and bend around them. The hegemony ships fell back, either unable to detect where they were heading or unwilling to follow into unknown territory. Now, Ilaria commanded. Thorn pushed the engines to maximum, and the Wanderer plunged forward into what appeared to be empty space. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to fold around them. The stars stretched, compressed, and rearranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When the universe stabilized again, they were somewhere else entirely. Below them spread a breathtaking sight, a world of sweeping azure oceans and land masses covered in silver-leafed forests that glowed faintly even from orbit. Lysithea, Ilaria whispered, one of the hidden worlds of my people. Thorn stared in awe at the planet. It's beautiful, and safe for now. The wormhole will collapse behind us, and the hegemony has no maps to this sector. As they guided the Wanderer into the planet's atmosphere, Thorn became aware of the change in himself. The energy that had awakened during their escape hadn't faded. It had settled into him, becoming part of who he was. They landed in a clearing surrounded by the silver forest. When they stepped outside, the air was sweet and pure, filled with scents Thorn had never experienced before. In the distance, structures of impossible architecture rose among the trees, their surfaces shifting like the interior of Ilaria's ship had. My people will be surprised to see a human here, Ilaria said, taking his hand. Where their skin touched, a soft glow emerged, his energy and hers intermingling. What happens now? Thorn asked, suddenly uncertain. He had been a drifter, a salvager on the fringes of human space. Now he stood on an alien world, changed in ways he was only beginning to understand. Ilaria's eyes, those cosmic pools that had captivated him from the first moment, gazed into his with emotion that transcended species. Now we change everything, she said. The connection between our peoples isn't just history, Thorn. It's the future. What's happening between us proves that humans and Celestrians are meant to evolve together, not be enemies or weapons for the hegemony. She gestured toward the distant structures where her people waited. We'll need to prepare. Drask won't stop searching. The hegemony won't abandon their plans, but they've never faced what we now know is possible. Thorn looked down at their joined hands, at the energy that danced between them, a symbol of something larger than either of them alone. I was just looking for salvage, he said with a wry smile. Instead, I found you. Perhaps that was always your destiny, Ilaria replied, her voice soft. To find me, to help me, to become something new with me. As they walked together toward the silver forest, Thorn realized that his life of running was truly over. He had found something worth standing for, a connection that spanned galaxies and promised a future brighter than either of their pasts. Behind them, the Wanderer rested in the clearing, no longer just a salvage ship, but a symbol of their journey. And ahead, a new chapter waited to be written, one where the stars themselves might bear witness to what happens when two hearts from different worlds find each other across the vastness of space.